No. Hey guys, today I'm going to show you a alternate history map I created about a year ago. So I'm just going to be explaining the map and show time progressing slowly, and the point of departure is World War One. During World War One, as we know, the Germans, Austrians, and Ottomans were at war against the Russians, French, and English. And over here, the thing that changed history was that Mexico and America joined the war. Whenever they joined the war, it put so much strain on the Entente, the Triple Entente, that they just collapsed. They couldn't deal with two huge powers attacking them as well from the east. And as you can see, America is a bit stronger, has a bit more land by having Baja California. This is also because of them having it during Mexican purchase. Whenever they purchased all these lands over here, they also took Baja California just as an extra peninsula for further expansion. Anyway, the Germans didn't really want to expand so much and make their empire weak, so they kept this area over here just so that they won't just to weaken France, which puts France in the issue. But they also have Poland under them as a vassal state. You have Poland and France is also a pseudo-vassal state. They are much weaker. They have to pay lots of war reparations, but not as crippled as Germany during the actual Treaty of Versailles. The reason why America joined the war was because of German promises that they could keep British Canada, and Mexican promises that they can keep Central America. And for the most part, they did succeed in that. After the war, America conducted War Plan Red, which took over all of Canada pretty much easily. And after they conquered Canada, it made the British so weakened and in shock of it that they collapsed as well. America sent groups to separatist groups in Wales, Scotland, and Ireland to fully make them independent from British rule, further weakening the British. So now all they have is the Island of Man, a couple of other islands, and England itself. Austria-Hungary, it just really wanted to stay together. It was weakened like the Ottomans as well. They're both dying states. So they became the United States of Austria-Hungary. And now they're so much more stable. Germany also did get intermarium. They just took a whole bunch of their vassal states and made them into one big buffer. The Ottomans during this period, you can see them as a huge power, but we'll talk about that later. At the moment, the Ottomans were just barely holding on. They survived the war, they joined the winning side, so they're not going to collapse. The Ottomans used this extra time to stabilize themselves and make them not about to collapse any second now. So they were just doing whatever they want to do in the inside. Russia, on the other hand, you can see Russia just collapsed completely. Russia came out with the worst of all the deals. They lost this area over here that was given to Finland. Finland also got a whole bunch of extra lands. The Russians lost the Baltics, Ukraine, Belarus, and basically they just kept their core Russian land. It's this type of orange over here. The Tatars took over this area of Russia, and these are three other post-Russian Siberian nations. China collapsed as well. The Americans said under President Truman, let's give these people self-governance by nationality, which is why Russia collapsed. And England collapsed. France had more or less a concentrated culture, so they didn't really take lower the amount of lands that they had. But that's why China collapsed under multiple rulers. This is mainland China. They're just a Chinese nation at this point. This is Greater Mongolia. This is under Truman's eye. This is Greater Manchuria. Japan also collapsed, so this is Korea, the Kingdom of Korea, and this is Tibet. And Japan kept most of its land, including the Anu land and a couple of islands over here. India fully collapsed, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Years later, the Ottomans had a resurgence. They firstly took over, they made a strong foothold in Arabia and kicked out all the other colonizers. And Truman said, for Africa to be free, make it have multiple different free nations and let them have self-governance. Everyone agreed, and even the Ottomans agreed. But years later, now the Ottomans have a resurgence of power. They firstly took over all of Arabia, and to not have a two-front war again, they took over all of Persia. At this point, Persia was super weak, so they had no choice but to surrender to the Ottomans. The Ottomans did try to take over parts of Europe again. They took over Greece and Albania and Kosovo. And while they took over Kosovo, and they took over Bosnia too, they were gonna circumnavigate the whole Balkans. But Austria was not gonna have another huge resurgence of the Ottomans. So they created the Neo-Yugoslavia. I know there's Romania, but that's just how it's gonna be. It has Romania, Moldova, Serbia, Montenegro, Bulgaria, and Northern Macedonia into this confederacy, just to keep the Ottomans at bay so they can have a buffer state. The Ottomans took the peace deal, and that's how the borders are like now. They also took over Cyprus, just for good measure. They tried to take over Crimea and go up from there, but they were stopped as well. You can see the line over here. That's a little bit of Ukraine over here and Crimea. While they're doing that, they want to have a secure border on top of them, so they created the Republic of the Caucasus. They were going to try and take it over, but it's better to have a strong ally than a war, an unstable border. They easily took over all of North Africa, but nothing under Egypt or and they haven't taken over Mauritania yet. They took over Sicily as well, and at this point Switzerland, under the help of Germany, was making a Swiss empire because they also joined Germany, which collapsed Italy as well. Italy is under 4 different kingdoms and nations. The Empire of Genoa, which is over here, which has Sardinia and Corsica. Then there is the Republic of Florence, the Roma Repubblica, and the Kingdom of Naples. They're all just into their old previous borders, disputing with one another, which can take over the entirety of Italy again. The Ottomans are right on top of the Iberian Peninsula. They're near the Iberian Peninsula. And this is now in the Spanish Civil War. Them alongside Portugal allied to weaken the Spanish. The Ottomans said at this point, Portugal, you can take over Galicia while we take over the south of Spain. They agreed, and now there's Al-Andalus, a vassal state, while then there's northern Spain. The Ottomans at this point were way too powerful. America was getting really scared, so they, alongside Mexico, are going to try to bring the Western ideology onto the world, kind of like a new version of the Cold War. France collapsed because of all the pressure and it became communist. The Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg were really, really scared at this point, so they created the new nation of Benelux under the protection of Germany. And the Nordic nations also united after America annexed Greenland. They did not want to join any side, so they stayed neutral. They don't want to join the American side nor the Ottoman side. They don't like any of these two ideologies. And they're going to lead the neutral cause. America, so that there won't be any Ottoman influence in the Western Hemisphere, created the Caribbean Republic, which is basically just all the Caribbean islands into one nation. At this point, Africa was fair game for the Ottomans. They're right next door, and they wanted to influence it into the Islamic way of view. They conquered and fully annexed Mauritania and Sudan. They also took over Somalia and made it into the Greater Somalian region. They also gave Abyssinia, which is Ethiopia at this time, South Sudan, and Eritrea into its own different kingdom, the Abyssinian kingdom. And that pleased the Abyssinians, so they won't have to conquer the entirety of Ethiopia. And then they created the Mali Caliphate, the Neo-Mali Caliphate. It has all this western coast of Africa, mostly the western coast of Africa, and Mali itself. This is mostly the Muslim nations, so Muslim population of this region, so it makes sense to unite all of them into a neo-caliphate to make the region more prosperous and more stable. They also created the Caliphate of Chad just to make these two regions separate and fully sufficient for the nation, for the people. America, again, is really nervous, so they created the Union of the Congo, Greater Gabon, and the Central African Empire, alongside the Union of West Africa over here. So they just created 4 different nations to balance out South Africa, to balance out Sub-Saharan Africa. They also later created the East African Republic, the Union of Zimbabwe and Malawi, Angola, and the Empire of South Africa. They didn't really, they wanted to make it a union, but the South Africans got so much power out of American interest that they annexed all the other nations around them, making it an empire. They also took Madagascar and made it into a republic. The Ottomans, after hearing that, were furious and created the Swahili Sultanate, taking over multiple different island nations as well. This making Africa into two formal pacts, and the Ottomans, after making their huge sphere of influence, changed the name into the Grand Caliphate. South America went into a completely radical direction. They excluded every single foreign nation and focused on their own continent. They had multiple different bloody civil wars and wars between nations, and they ultimately created four different nations: the Kingdom of Brazil, Gran Colombia, the Union of Peru, Bolivia, and Paraguay, and the Empire of Argentina. And they all are staying neutral alongside the Empire of South Africa. Now, India had a terrible time getting out of their decolonization phase. The Ottomans created this huge juggernaut called the Sultanate of Central Asia. They united all the Central Asian nations, including others such as Pakistan, a bit of the Russian Muslim population, the Uyghur population, and a majority of the Muslim population of India into one central nation, influence all other nations around it. This would be the second greatest Muslim power besides the Grand Caliphate. And they used to be extremely destabilized by the different populations and ethnic groups trying to fight over one another, but they made a really good way of getting every single population to not feel excluded or abused, which heavily made the Sultanate stable. They have extremely good relations with the Bengali Sultanate, which is bigger. They have most of the Bengal region, alongside some Muslim Burmese areas. Then there's the Emirate of Hyderabad and a whole bunch of other Indian nations. The big issue with the decolonization of India was that the Muslims had a bigger say now than before. Before, it was mostly the Muslims getting the exterior of India, while the Hindus getting the majority of India. This is different. We have the Kingdom of Rajasthan, the Kingdom of Odisha, Kingdom of Maharashtra, and the Kingdom of South India. They also have a bit of Sri Lanka, but the areas with Muslim control are under the Sultanate of Central Asia and the Bengali Sultanate. Indonesia, during its decolonization phase, went into massive expansionist mode. It doesn't really want any connections with the Grand Sultanate, and because it doesn't want anyone to tell them what to do. They fully annexed East Timor, parts of Malaysia and Brunei, and they were stable at first, and then they were happy with that. But then they just went on a campaign of conquering every single island, including the other part of the Papua New Guinea region. They also got the Philippines, and once they were extremely stable with the waters, they went in a land offensive, taking Singapore, the rest of Malaysia, and all the way up here into Thailand. In response to that, the rest of Southeast Asian nations united into this little union. It's a republic and it's much weaker, and it's under the influence of China. China now, under a lot of pressure, went back to its dynastical roots and became the Han dynasty again under its majority Han ethnic group. And finally, there's the Republic of Polynesia, which is a whole bunch of different islands into a very loose republic of different island states. And then there's the Aborigines Republic, which rose up and fought against the British colonizers and finally made its own republic for New Zealand and Australia. It's really weak and it's under the watchful eye of America. Finally, America really was scared that the Sultanate of Central Asia would really take over all of the rest of Central Asia and Siberia. So they made allies with the Khanate of Mongolia, the Khanate of Manchuria, the Khanate of Siberia, which is this, and the Republic of Kamchatka over here. And America also created the Northern Spanish Republic, seen in blue over here, to keep at least a little bit of influence from Spain, Ireland, Scotland, and Wales. And that's the only influence they would get in the region. Germany and Austria also joined America's side because they did not want the Ottomans to take over Europe. And now this is the entire world. We have America, the American influence, which is America and Mexico, with the Caribbean Republic, and Wales, Scotland, Ireland, the Northern Spanish Republic, Germany, the Benelux region, Intermarium, and Austria-Hungary with the Neo-Yugoslavia. That's all in Europe. And their influence in Africa, they have Union of West Africa, the Central African Empire, Greater Gabon, Union of the Congo, Angola, the Union of Zimbabwe and Malawi, and the East African Republic. Over here in Asia, they have all the Hindu nations as allies to America. They also have the Khanate of Siberia as a ally, the Khanate of Mongolia, the Khanate of Manchuria, and the Kamchatka Republic. They also have the Polynesian Republic and Aborigines Republic. While the Ottomans, or the Grand Caliphate, this is the Grand Caliphate, they have Portugal as an ally, the Republic of the Caucasus, They also have the Sultanate of Central Asia, the Emirate of Hyderabad, the Sultanate of Bengal, the Northern Caliphate. They also have the Mali Caliphate, Caliphate of Chad, Abyssinia, the Swahili Sultanate, and that's pretty much it. As for the neutral nations, we've got all of South America as neutral, the Empire of South Africa, which is neutral, the Empire of Switzerland and all the Italian nations are neutral, the Scandinavian Union is neutral, the Tsardom of Russia is neutral, China, Korea, and Japan are all neutral. The Union of Southeast Asia is neutral, and that's pretty much it. That's my entire world, and hopefully you guys like it. And bye.